Hey everyone, before I get started, I just want to remind you that if you like my content, hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and then join the Militia Man and Crew Patreon community by clicking the link in the caption. Hey, good evening everybody. Militia Man here. Just wanted to say good evening, and let's see if this summer turns out to be a big spark in our lives. So what's been going on, everybody? I think that what we're seeing is we have a lot of things that are global, many things that are in the news. A big focus is on Johannesburg with the BRICS. There's lots of things that are going on that will still yet to be determined, because I think it started yesterday. In fact, I know it did, and there's more today and then more tomorrow. But all of that has components of what's going on in the world, and that Iraq is part of the world. The United States is part of the world. All the BRICS nations are part of the world. And everybody's like trying to move in a direction that's equitable for everybody. Or equitable maybe, but maybe not so much as equally. But we'll see how that turns out. I'm not the one to be the judge of it, but fact remains is it's definitely big news, and we're going to have to see if some of those components that they have on the table are part of the process. Interestingly enough, you see a lot of information, a plethora of information on the BRICS point of view, but you see a little bit of the United States and other Western countries' point of view being kind of quiet, and maybe there's a reason for that. But anyway, it looks like the White House will call for reform of the IMF and the World Bank. That came out today. Basically, the White House is suggesting that their calls for reforms in the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, that there would be better circumstances that would serve the needs of developing countries during this next G20 summit in New Delhi this next month. The White House, looks like the advisor Jake Sullivan suggests that the administration will focus a large portion of the energy, while Jake is here, suggesting that modernizing the multilateral development banks, including the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, will be things that should be talked about. Fairly sure that what's happening with the BRICS, in brief, again, I'll let you guys look it up. We're just going to talk about it in essence, that it's not the main study. It's because it's unfolding. But they're basically suggesting is that the geopolitical situation with the United States is not a geopolitical situation. It looks like there's tensions between China and India in that regard, so that's why I'm kind of staying back, because there's data out that supports that, and we'll see how that plays out. But eventually, these leaders are going to finish up on Thursday, so let's watch and see how this plays out, because really we're not seeing much from the USA with respect to the BRICS summit. The USA is basically effectively denying that there is an effort on their part for turning BRICS into a geopolitical competitor. That's basically in the news. I guess there's an agreement or a disagreement on that. But with respect to India and China having tensions, they are in the public view. And so you can see that in our Patreon forum. And there's data that supports both of them having a little bit of a tension there, so that's fascinating. It looks like they go on to say that the BRICS economic bloc has played a vital role during the past decade in shaping the global economy in terms of total production. That's a big thing. They're talking about that they have a large portion of the production of the commodities in the world, and that what they're trying to do is create a multipolar global political instead of a unipolitical situation. Let's see that. Here's a quote, though, just to back my situation up. They're looking at trying to take the hegemony from the United States in the U.S. dollar. But here the quote is that familiar sources with the positions of China and India told told the newspaper that tensions are running high between Beijing and Delhi over the expansion should look like, what expansion should look like. And the main disagreement is whether BRICS should be a neutral club defending the economic interests of developing countries, or a political force that should openly oppose the West. So India on the former and China on the latter, suggesting political forces that should openly oppose the West. So there's your tension. That's what's going on. So at this stage of the game, we'll have to monitor it and see how it works out. You have to remember, when we're talking about opposing the West geopolitically or even with currency, you have to realize that, the United States of America is a giving country, and they are probably noted if you Google it, and depending on what parameters you use as far as GDP is concerned, you're going to find that the United States of America, when the tides turn, where does the world run to? They run to the US dollar, and they also run to America for their generosity. So some of those things that aren't being played out in the news, you've got to take them for heart. We are a generous country, and we do have the world reserve currency, and we do have some good side and we have some bad side, but the bottom line is we are a very generous country, and we take care of people. And all of the countries that are getting some exposure, even Indonesia, even Kenya, are up in the running for being some of the most generous countries in the world in helping out. I'm only bringing this up is because once you start to get, if in fact a geopolitical situation is when you start to take sides, when the world starts to take sides, that becomes kind of a conflict in my view. So we just keep an eye on it. It's fascinating. It's going to be in our faces here shortly, as of the next 24 to 48 hours. But let's see how this goes and progresses. But the international coalition will not be patient long with the Peshmerga, as they are in a race against time to implement standards. This is coming from the international coalition of forces that, along with the United States, have a view that Iraq needs to unify their military, because they have militias, they have different, they have the PUK and the KDP. They have those entities that they're trying to consolidate into one so that they have solidarity with the whole country. And that's going to be a tough road, and I'm not sure if it's going to turn out how it's going to turn out one way or the other, but it's definitely something that we should be paying attention to. This article today says the Secretary General of the Ministry of Peshmerga and experts in military affairs, his name is Lieutenant General Jawar, confirmed that the unification of about 60,000 members of the Peshmerga forces affiliated with the ministry's office while noting that the patience of the international coalition will not last long in uniting. Why I bring this up is because al-Sudani had 3 different items that they needed to take care of. And those 3 items I'm going to get to here in a few minutes, but the bottom line is that al-Sudani has been requested to take care of some things, and one of them is just what I talked about, is that the unification, this is my view of how I understand it, is that the unification needs to be that they need to have those forces, the Peshmerga, the PUK and the KDP, in place. And why? Well, because investors are not going to come into the country if there's militias running around with weapons. And if they're not a main significant force that can be trusted in the sense that it's the government backed, they can feel comfortable with that the government has a rein on these forces. If they're thugs and thieves effectively, and you could get taken out, Investors are not going to like that. And this whole process, this whole program is all about going into the international market, that global financial system with that 2023, 24, 25 budget that's on the table. We've talked about it ad nauseum, but that's what's happening. Okay, it's basically saying that there is a time period. Fascinating that we've talked about this before. I've talked about specified time frames in the last video. If you go back and look, you're going to find that I talked about specified time frames. And there's a new additional time frame, which is fascinating because they throw it out there, but if you read it really close, it's not anything to be concerned about in the effect of that it's a later date. The fact remains is they get to the point, that date is a date, but it doesn't mean that things can't happen prior to it, which is the 29th of this month. I'll get to that. A time period has been set to reform and unify the Peshmerga forces with the support of international coalition and the United States of America, and is currently under pressure from advisors and the leadership of the international coalition, and aims to accelerate the unification of forces. So here you have it, is that they're basically stating they have a time period. I use the word specified time frames. They're using those words. I'm not, but they all kind of correlate. Okay, it goes on to say that the commander of American forces in Syria and Iraq confirmed that the Peshmerga were unable, and they have been unable at this juncture, to unite their forces, but they would continue to be able to try to do so and support them. He goes on to say that the United States and the international coalition have a memorandum of understanding that stipulates reform and unification of forces. And if this reform fails, their patience will certainly not last long. Well, that's a pretty heavy-handed situation to say. We've been talking about it for a long period of time. You haven't done it yet. It's one of the 3 items that you're required to do, which you've done 2. I'll show that shortly. But this particular thing is that you haven't done. But if you just remember what I just said, the time period has been set that they're working on it. And it looks like it's possibly, enough pressure is that we're going to see something on it. Is it the nail in the coffin if it doesn't happen? Absolutely not. The bottom line is that it needs to be taken into consideration as you go into the future. I'm pretty sure al-Sudani knows that. I'm sure everybody in the region knows that, and they're moving on that. Obviously it's going to take some time, but again, it's openly put in public. Okay, it says as far as the Pentagon's concerned, the Pentagon looks forward to having a unified, non-political Peshmerga force under the control of the Ministry of Peshmerga. When they say non-political, what that means is that all the political factions have their own militias. They got to get rid of that. They can't have every political bloc in Iraq having their own militias throwing their weight around. They need to have a unified government military, or effectively. So anyway, that's what they're talking about. It says the Pentagon may work to stop financing and assisting the Peshmerga forces if the unification condition is not met. That's their words. It's pretty intense. If they don't listen, they're going to potentially lose funding. So we'll see how it plays out. Look, here's I guess a few words from in my view. It says, I say, for instance, that if this situation is aligned with Sudani or not, he's given 3 urgent files to undertake. Sudani has. This has been, I think, back in the early part of August, but 2 of which have been clearly met. One, first, is that was he able to meet this particular one, in which is achieving a tangible achievement in the field of combating corruption, exposing the major corruption leaders, and submitting a list of their names to the Ministry of Defense, the American side, for the purpose of pursuing them and draining their money. Well, if you go back into Patreon and you Google some of the terms here, not Google it, but you go into our search bar, you'll find that al-Sudani has done that. He has exposed some of that corruption. There's arrests all the time. It's constantly being done. Even RTC on YouTube today is still having silly comments about that's all we talk about, but it's fact. It's in the news that we do talk about that stuff. And the Ministry of Defense on the American side wants what? They want a tangible achievement. Al-Sudani did that. Arrests and so forth have taken place. They've named names, even the banks, for instance. Okay, the third thing, which we'll come back to the second, was monitoring the movement of Iraqi money and not allowing foreign currency to be smuggled into Iran and Syria, and anybody that was supporting the Revolutionary Guard. We all know that the new ISO 20022 platform, the SWIFT system, their new platforms for communications, all of those have been doing what they wanted to, was to monitor, find the corruption, and to keep the currency, which is the dollar, only used for legal purposes. So that's the third thing. But the second thing is starting to dismantle the popular crowd by merging it with the security and military institutions and stripping the powers of the administrative and military leaders. Yeah, so that third thing being done, if it's been done, we have a very good chance of seeing this through, because look, the pressure that's being on them, that's the key thing. It's the pressure. And it's not all just about this last bit, but the bottom line is that the international coalition has basically said that their patience is not going to last long, and that funding could be shut down if they don't get their act together. And so why are they doing it at this stage of the game? Well, they had the three things, the three items that they needed. The first one was done, the third one was done, and the second one, they want it at least underway. So that's how I see it. It's excellent. So we'll see how it goes. The next thing what we're going to talk about today is Turkey, for instance. Turkey's at the table. We know that they've been having some issues with oil crossing the borders. Yeah, so it says basically, I'm pleased to be in Baghdad with our friends. The Turkish foreign minister seems to be kind of happy about this. He says, we're especially pleased to be with the minister and the foreign minister, and we're working together with transitioning relations between Turkey and Iraq and resolving the existing problems between the two countries. And they go on with that. The relations with our neighbor, Iraq, are at the forefront of foreign policy. Of course, at this time, it's getting close to that time where Iraq's about ready to go international. It's basically this gentleman, his name is Hakan Fidan, says, we see Iraq as a reliable partner that can achieve strategic goals together, and that the prosperity, security, and stability of Iraq will be reflected in Turkey. Well, at that stage of the game, when Iraq starts opening up this development road project, Turkey is going to be a beneficiary. He goes on and says, we also support the government formed by Mohammed al-Sudani. He's giving support to the prime minister, of course. It says that he cares about the path of the development, which is the development road project, and that they support it. It's a strategic step, which turns into a central aspect, and it's important for the region. So Iraq is going to be a central aspect. And also they're going on to suggest that the project will contribute to, again, stability of the region, and doubly they will prosper. I mean, so he's not only saying it's like just a basic, it's like going to be twice as much. So anyway, the support for this from these two countries is phenomenal, and let's see where they run with this. But I wanted to get into a little portion of this, which was fascinating, is that in our Patreon community, we have patrons, and one of the things that with my post today, David was one of our patrons. He quotes, says that this is a critical step forward that needs to succeed, that Iraq can resolve the three main problems they have with Turkey as soon as possible. One, in his opinion, start shipping oil again from Kurdistan to the port in Turkey. Basically, this is extremely critical. Iraq is losing millions of dollars each day that this is delayed. He's not wrong. 2, resolve the critical problems of Turkey controlling the water flow into Iraq. Major issue. We have Romanowski in town in the last 3 or 4 days is specifically addressing that issue, so he's not wrong. Settle the amount of money that Turkey owes Iraq, ordered by the World Court, which is not wrong. There's been a court case specifically talking about that. I think it's in the billions of dollars. He goes on and says if they can accomplish these 3 challenges, Iraq will gain billions of dollars in revenues. He's not wrong again. These meetings, hopefully, if successful, will put another gigantic feather in Sudanese led government, in his opinion. Well, thank you, David, because I'll tell you what, that's a fascinating, very well put, very well done, and it supports our thinking here with militiamen and crew. So kudos on you. We're going to move on to another little bit of al-Sudani, for instance, is that the completion of the budget financing follow-up platform is a first step in reforming the financial system in Iraq. So obviously, we've been talking about the financial system. They've been working on the reforms, and from what we can see is that they're really pushing on it. And why are they pushing on it now? Well, have they been working on it for a while? I would assume so, and I think we're going to find that out. It says al-Sudani today says that the completion of the budget financing follow-up platform is a first step in reforming the financial system in Iraq. So this new platform, we've been talking about new systems, and here he's talking about it, they're reforming the financial system. So that reforming a financial system has got to be, to me, equivalent to moving into the global financial system, because they've been upgrading theirs to get higher up. So Prime Minister suggests today that a meeting was dedicated to reviewing an electronic platform which was designed and implemented by self-efforts for the purpose of following up the financing of the budget. So this 2022, 23, 24, 25 budget is a new thing, and they just basically are telling us that they've been following up on implementing that budget. One of the things that we're probably going to see too is in the future is specifically talking about spending, but we'll move on to that if that comes up tonight. It says that the agencies and a number of ministries and governance implemented that are in cooperation with the National Data Center, through which it is possible to follow up on the implementation of the budgets of ministries, their governance, government agencies that are not linked to ministries and expenditures doors they're in. So this National Data Center, they've got it set up so they have communication, so they know what's coming and going. It's fascinating. Can you think about the timing now? It's all like boom, boom. It's like dominoes falling. It's fascinating. So he says, al-Sudani, he says, quote, the efforts of those working to complete this platform and considered it a first step in reforming the financial system in Iraq by dealing with this important file, and instructed to circulate it to spending, there it is, units in all ministries and governments and agencies. So we've been talking about allocations, distributions, and we've been talking about spendings. So here they specifically state they're talking about spending. He also indicated that the program is an electronic mechanism that covers the entire chain of financing the general budget, ensuring the provision of updated data with the Prime Minister or any responsible party that makes use of the information, and the possibility of, quote, early diagnosis of imbalance and delay centers. So this new system has the ability to pay attention and act and react when necessary. It's fascinating. So that's obviously a sign that change is coming. He's basically saying here, as he stresses, the program will establish new new work contexts that add more accuracy and transparency to the means of dispersing public funds. Or what? Dispersing public funds, spending, okay, and contribute to supporting financial control and following up on the volume of funding within the tabulation prepared and meeting the priorities of the government program in various sectors. So again, following up on the volume of funding, so that's the velocity of it, the volume of it, within the tabulation prepared, which is the budget spreadsheet, if you will, maybe, and meeting the priorities of the government program in all the various sectors around the country. So it's a welcome sign. I'm fairly sure that if they keep focused on this, there's no coincidences. We can see that they're about to start spending, and spending is going to need an exchange rate that is not 1,310 as the official exchange rate. We've been over that numerous times. But here again, let's watch and see what they do. I believe that they're at that stage where the spending project is about ready to go. The security and stability is being enforced. So again, let's see how it goes. Now, some of the things that we talked about too before were the securities, right? The central depository security system, which is having to deal with the ISX. And we talked about specified times. We talked about specified time frames. I did a YouTube that gave dates that are all public information. And if you go through my YouTube and then you go to Patreon and Discord, you're going to find that all that data is there and it's valuable information. And that's why Patreon is such a value for those that aren't here, just to understand that there's a powerful information in our site. This particular article says Iraqi security signs an agreement for financial investment and economic development in the Kurdistan region. So the Securities Commission announced the signing of a cooperation agreement between it and the International Center for Finance and Trade, obligating the two parties to promote financial investment, development, economic activities in the Kurdistan region. Fairly sure they're talking about both regions, the central region and Kurdistan. But anyway, I'll go on. As in a strategic step aimed at supporting the Iraqi economy, there you go, and enhancing cooperation between the public and private sectors. So it goes on with a statement issued by the authority is suggesting that Faisal al-Hamas, chairman of the Securities Authority, and Saad Abdullah Kahar al-Sheikh, Director General of the International Center for Finance and Trade, today signed an agreement in the city of Sulaymaniyah, as this step comes as part of a strategy to achieve sustainable development by embracing the economic environment, expanding the investment base. So if they're going to enhance the economic environment and expand the investment base, look, Iraq stocks are 000 stocks or 0.000, etc. And most institutions that are out there trading in the stock markets, they can't trade 000 stocks. The Nasdaq's not going to take 000 stocks. Even smaller, developed over-the-counter stocks won't trade 000 stocks. So when they say sustainable development by enhancing the economic environment and expanding the investment base, they're going to have to up their game and get it taken care of. They don't have any position to just come out low. Their stock exchange is extremely so low value that they need a major move by the country to reflect what is their true, real effective exchange rate, and they need to show that in a short period of time to be able to do that. It goes on, it says that the Central Bank of Iraq is supporting this initiative related to establishment of the International Center for Finance and Trade in Somalia. Suleimania. The statement added that the agreement seeks to encourage and enhance the culture of investing, and they are investing in securities, noting that the Commission and the Center are working accordingly to the government agreement to exchange expertise and knowledge in the legal, administrative, and technical fields to enhance investment activity in securities in the region, and to make joint efforts to attract investors and developing the economic climate. So the Securities Commission is looking to make headway now, big time, to make joint efforts to attract investors and develop the economic climate. Global investors are not going to come into Iraq Stock Exchange at 1310. They've not done it before, and they're not going to do it tomorrow. They're going to have to, something's going to have to change for them to be motivated. And remember, corporations and bylaws do not allow certain companies to trade under $1, in some cases under $5. So large corporations, big companies, when they come in, and if they want to get into the stock exchange, they need to have reporting, they need to have all the data to back up why all their accounting, all their, well, maybe not in their country, but we have 8Ks, 10Ks, all kinds of Qs, quarterlies. You have all kinds of stuff that you need to be able to pay attention to. And this is probably one of the things that if they're going to interlink with the ISX and they're going to interlink with the global financial system, they're going to have international standards for reporting when it comes to their stock exchange. And this particular article is basically getting to the fact that there's been an economic climate that's getting ready to do that. So remember, when we've talked about specific things, like for instance, it said from the central bank, I believe, let's see, I got 3 of these. It says in the past, it says from the first time we heard about it, it says that we would like to inform you that the auction for trading money transfers to the central bank has been announced for a period of 14 days, and that was by the number B302, and that the implementation would be on 7/8/2023. Okay, so they gave banks an opportunity to get in line with the Central Securities Depository System. Central Securities Depository System is a component of the NASDAQ technology, and then after that one, we have another one that comes out. It says that we would like to inform you the auction for traditional money transfers to the Central Bank of Iraq has been announced for a period of 14 days. It says it similar. It's almost like the same sentence, but it goes on and says it's B303. So this is all data you guys can find. It's the news. It's not me just making it up. It says, and the implementation will be on 8/23. I have a strong feeling that implementation was today. Today's the 23rd. And according to the details included in the announcement published on the Central Securities Deposit System, banks can start by submission from the date of announcement until the day of implementation. So if they're ready, you've got to remember things I've talked about, specified timeframes. This is what they've told us. All I'm saying is that I'm collecting it, putting it together. The last date I'm going to give you, which is going to be fascinating, because remember, look, everybody needs the new exchange rate. And when we talk about specified times, I'm going to back up before I give you that last bit. It says the Ministry of Trade, Athir Al-Gharari, met in his office today, Wednesday, with experts in the United Nations Trade Center. This is I think back a couple weeks ago, or a week or so ago. It says the Nations Trade Center, the World Trade Organization, representatives of the World Food Program and the European Union were there to discuss a formula for joint action to support the process of Iraq's accession to the World Trade Organization, right? So he goes on and quotes, he says, he pointed out that the ministry is responsible for the internal and external economic policy and continues to work with steps and programs to implement this within its ministerial curriculum at the specified time frames. I've been talking about the internal, external. The budget needs to be internal, external. The external portion of the 23, 24, 25 budget is the operational and investment side, not the services side. We've talked about that. I'd probably go back 3 or 4 videos of mine, but it doesn't matter. But this is really fascinating because I want to key in on something. Because when you talk about dates and time frames, they're all confusing. They are what they tell us. But check this out. He says, we would like to inform you that the auction, slightly different, of the Islamic Certificate of Deposit, which is ICD 120, has been announced with a deadline of 14 days. All similar, okay? And he goes on and says that the date of implementation of the auction will be on Tuesday, 8/29/23. Okay, so that's past what we've been talking about. All those dates that I mentioned, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, right? Okay, so it goes past that. And everybody goes, well, it's always kicking the can. Well, hold on. Check this out. It says, excuse me, the date of implementation of the auction will be on Tuesday, 8/29/2023, according to what was published in the Central Depository System Securities, which is the CSD, and Islamic banks. So pay attention to that. It says, and Islamic banks can participate since the date of the publication of the advertisement until the day of implementation. So it's basically stating is that they can participate since today, the 23rd, publication of the advertisement until the date of implementation. So at any time now, if they're able to or can participate since the date of publication, the publication is today. That's in my opinion. So fascinating stuff, you guys. I think that everybody should be in a good space, even aside from all the news that are correlating with the global circumstances, the BRICS circumstances. Keep in mind that one of the dates that Al Sudani had set up, that he had wanted for specific projects to be done, which was the operational projects, were set up to be completed tomorrow, which coincides with the final day of the BRICS situation. The federal court situation that we talked about was on the 26th, because that's what they said they had to have that budget, which is the 23-24 tripartite, 25 tripartite budget, has to be ready to go. And here we have that any time between now and that date of this Islamic situation, things can happen, and those Islamic banks, if they want to participate, as long as they're involved, they can do so. And so therefore it covers everybody. So fascinating stuff. I hope you enjoyed my perspective tonight, and let's see what happens. So I know that you guys can, if you like my comments and you like my product, tap the like button, subscribe, and you have various ways of helping keeping the place going by hitting those buttons. Thank you. Once again, guys, don't forget to hit that like button if you like this content. Subscribe to the channel or join us at the Militia Man and Crew Patreon community for even more exclusive content. You can also donate to this channel by hitting the links in the banner to help keep this page up and running. Your generous support is greatly appreciated, as always. Much, much appreciated. Thank you so much, and have a great day.